Hi, today I want to talk about how you fix pay issues. Hi, my name is Ian Hopfe. I'm an HR consultant. Today we're talking about how to fix pay issues. From my previous video, I'd mentioned that I was going to talk about it, so here it is. If you watch my previous video, people work for money. So that's the whole reason why they're working. And you need to learn to fix pay issues. I'd mentioned in my previous video, if you just gave everybody an extra $1 an hour, that might not have really fixed any pay issues. You need to really get down and dirty and figure out what the problem is, what the real pay issue is you've got going on. It's going to be different for industries, organization, the city you're in, or the town you're in, or the province or state you're in. You know, these are all going to be factors in this list of things I want to talk about now. So the first thing is minimum wage. I like to call this your legal obligation. You have to at least be paying the minimum wage. And in most places, you know, you're not going to get in trouble, but you're also not going to attract the best people or the best employees. The next thing you need to consider is the local living wage. And this I like to call an ethical obligation. You may be in a city or a town where in order to survive, a single person needs to make X amount of dollars per hour at a regular full-time job. There may be organizations that do this research for you in your area, so you might want to do a research on Google or wherever, on Bing, and say, local living wage I live in Edmonton, so I'll put Edmonton, Alberta, right? So you want to do the same search, and you want to find out what your employees need to live in the area where they work. This could be drastically different. In Alberta, it goes anywhere from $18 an hour to almost $40 an hour, depending on the community you're in. And I know the one vacation town of Canmore in southern Alberta in the mountains, the living wage at this time is something like $36 an hour. Well, most of the people that work in that community can't live in that community because they're not making enough to actually live there. And you got communities like Fort McMurray where all the oil is, that's a little bit higher. Edmonton is kind of middle of the road. I think we're sitting at about $21 or $22 an hour. If you're paying less than that, you're not meeting your ethical obligation to your employees. The next thing to think about is the industry standard pay. Depending on what your industry is, are you paying the same as everyone else? Are you paying a little bit more? Are you paying less? Right? And again, this is kind of, I like to call this a skills obligation. If you want the best people in your industry to come work for you, then you got to pay them better than the industry standard. No matter what industry you might be in, you got to pay just a little bit more. Always pay that little bit more. And you're still taking into consideration everything else, right? So you're kind of looking at these and saying, what's the highest that I need to cover? So when you're thinking about minimum wage, in most places, minimum wage, that's easy to cover. And just make sure everyone in your organization is making more than the lowest minimum wage in all the areas you work. So maybe you have employees in a different state or a different province or a different country, and there's different minimum wages. Make sure they're all above the lowest one. And local living wage, you might want to treat that the same. If you're primarily in one community, you don't worry about it so much. Just make sure everyone's making that or more. But if you have offices or locations, job sites in different areas, the living wage in those areas are all going to be a little bit different. Make sure, to be a good employer, try to make sure that you're paying the highest local living wage to everyone. So this community might be 18, this community might be 21. I would say pay everyone 21, just to be safe and fair, meeting that ethical obligation. And the skills obligation, this is kind of like the cherry on top. If you want the best of the best, yeah, you're going to have to pay a little bit more. $1 an hour, $5 an hour, or $5 an hour. You never know what you might need this is specific to your industry. The next thing you want to do to try to solve your pay issues is to create a pay grid. Now, this creates a fairness in your organization, and it helps you with your budget. So I like to call this a fairness and budget obligation. The pay grid allows you to set that budget. So a new employee or a less experienced employee starts at this level, and your top rock star, most experienced employee is making this level. So you've got this budget, this area. So what you want to do when you're creating your budget for your business, you want to say, I'm budgeting the high end, right? And then you hire people and you put them all in that pay grid. And they're never going to go out of that pay grid, at least for the year. And you know that you have to pay a certain minimum, right? And you've created this pay grid with all this stuff that you've learned already in this video. So at the end of the year, you're going to have people at different levels within this. And that extra little budget that you didn't use, that's your surplus, and you can use that for different things, paying off some debt, helping to build the industry and your business in the next year, maybe giving some bonuses. I want to talk about cost of living increase next. This I like to call an economic obligation. This is economic because cost of living, aka inflation, is happening, especially now in 2024. We see, I don't want to call it corporate greed, but we see large organizations making billions, but they're not giving pay increases to their employees. And that's the cost of living right now that's happening in this day and age. So you've got to kind of meet this economic obligation to always make sure you're giving a cost of living pay increase at least once a year. And you can do this by just, what was the inflation last year? Just give them that percentage. Or to save on the budget and kind of keep it a little more level, you take the last 3 years or 5 years and you find the average, these divided by 5, that's your percentage that you would give as a cost of living increase. Next thing I want to talk about, merit pay increases. This is the performance obligation, I like to call it. If you have a high performer and they're doing lots of work, by all means give them a pay increase. Maybe you do this once a year. So you're thinking January, you give everyone a cost of living increase. And then sometime June, July, you give your best performers a merit pay increase. And this is one notch up the pay grid that you've developed. The cost of living pay increase shifts the whole pay grid higher, where the merit pay increase puts people just in the next level within the pay grid. So you're kind of hitting both things there, the economic obligation and the performance obligation. with the cost of living and the merit pay increases. Now, I'd mentioned above, with the pay grid, you might have a surplus. This is where in December, Christmas bonus time, you might want to give a one-time bonus and make it some real money. Make it something good. This is kind of what I like to call the wealth obligation. Your business has done well. You've created a surplus. There's extra money. So because you've created wealth, you have an obligation to share that wealth. This is the trickle down that people talk about in economics and capitalism that doesn't happen. As a small business owner or mid-sized business owner, you have that ability and obligation to share your wealth, because this is going to make your employees so happy. They're going to make them so loyal. They're going to trust you. There's just so many amazing things that come out of that. Imagine if every employee got $1,000 at Christmas time. Try to make it a substantial number. If you can only give $100, I guess that's all you can give, but try to make sure it's really worth the time, right? This is something special that's happening at the Christmas party or for the year or something like that, right? You want to make it that one real great one-time bonus. You don't want to make it a National Lampoons type bonus that's the Jelly of the Month Club, right? You don't want something like that. You don't want a $50 gift card to something. You want something that's substantial, $500,000 or more, if you can manage it, because these people are going to be so happy going into the new year. It's going to do wonders for you. After you've solved all your pay issues, then you can start thinking of the other benefits that you might be able to give, because it's the pay that's most important. But if you've got this dialed in and you're able to give bonuses because you've created the pay grid and everybody's happy getting their cost of living and their merit pay increases, and you're showing your love to the hard workers, then the benefits come into play for you to solve other issues and other needs of your employees. But the first thing they want is that money. Hands down, that's the most important. And what if you can't afford to fix pay issues? I'll try to make another video. You're going to have to get creative. If you got this far, thanks. Thank you very much. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment if you got any follow-up questions. I'll try to answer them. Thanks. Bye.